holidays. Get us out of here.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Bay County Board of Commissioners on Tuesday, December 12th, 2017 at approximately 4:05. Take the roll, please.
Durancheck.
Here.
Krieger.
Yes.
Big Ick.
Here.
Coonan.
Here.
Ryder.
Here.
Lutz.
Here.
Herrick.
Here.
All members present.
Okay. We'll have the invocation, and after the invocation, we'll have a moment of silence for my big brother Tim Herrick, who passed away the other day, and Frances Sharon, the mother of Judge Joe Sharon.
Heavenly Father, we come before you this afternoon thanking you for the guidance and understanding that you have given this Board of Commissioners. Lord, we ask again today for your help and direction to carry on and do the good work that has been placed before them. May your divine providence help them to benefit every citizen in this community. In your holy name we ask this. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First thing on the agenda will be the minutes of 11/7 and 11/14/17.
Motion approved.
Support. Any discussion?
We'll talk.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next will be citizen input. If there's anyone who would like to come forth and speak to everybody who's going to watch it on TV, now's the time to do it. Nobody. All right. So we'll move right to petitions and communications. Number one is, I'm glad you made it. We were just talking about you. This will be the recognition of Eileen Curtis on her retirement from the Bay Area Community Foundation. That's Resolution 2017-258. And I would have the clerk please read this.
Bay County Board of Commissioners, whereas over the years, Bay County has enjoyed the leadership of many individuals who are visionaries with a love of community and a commitment to the growth and prosperity of all Bay County. And whereas one of these leaders is Eileen A. Curtis, President and CEO of the Bay Area Community Foundation. Whereas Eileen A. Curtis has announced her retirement from the Bay Area Community Foundation effective December 2017. And whereas since joining the foundation in 2007, Eileen A. Curtis has overseen a 35% growth in assets from $27 million to $36 million. And during her tenure, the foundation has awarded over $13 million in grants to nonprofit organizations and scholarships to students pursuing post-secondary education. And whereas Eileen A. Curtis has played an integral role in the development of the Bay Commitment First Generation Scholarship and the Great Lakes Bay College and Career Resource Center. Whereas, working closely with the Bay Area Chamber of Commerce, Eileen A. Curtis is one of the community leaders instrumental in implementing the Bay County Roadmap to the Future. And whereas, Eileen A. Curtis has served as director on the boards of the Council of Michigan Foundations, the Michigan College Access Network, the Northeastern Michigan Estate Planning Council, Mid-Michigan Chapter of the Association of Fundraising Professionals, as well as the McLaren Bay region. Whereas the level of professionalism and the dedication displayed by Eileen A. Curtis during her career is exemplary and must be acknowledged. Therefore, be it resolved that the Bay County Board of Commissioners and the Bay County Executive do hereby recognize the efforts and contributions to the Bay County community made by Eileen A. Curtis and extend best wishes for a long, healthy, and well-deserved retirement. Congratulations.
Eileen, we need you to step up here, please. Mr. Barsha, would you step up forward?
I make a motion to
I need a
receive.
motion to receive, please.
So moved.
Support. To approve.
Glad to approve, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, Mr. Curtis Krieger.
I do have just a comment. You know, being fortunate enough to work with you on a number of different projects, Bay County certainly owes you a huge amount of thanks for all of what you've done in getting Bay County to where we are today. I really appreciate what you've done, and you're leaving quite a big spot to fill. So congratulations on your next whatever.
If I could say a few words to it. We had breakfast this morning and had a chance to personally congratulate you on your distinguished career with the Bay Area Community Foundation. And on behalf of myself and residents of Bay County, we want you to know how, as Commissioner Krieger just mentioned, how appreciated you are for the imprint you've had, not only in Bay County, but on this region. And you really, you're going to be succeeded, but I think you're not replaceable. So we wish you the very best, you and Eric, in your, as you step down from the intense level of commitment and dedication you've had the last decade leading the foundation. And wish you the very best in the next chapter of your life, you and Eric both. And just say that on behalf of the people, we really appreciate all of the tireless effort to enhance the quality of life in Bay County that you have accomplished.
Thank you.
I have to say a couple words. Well, you know, I met you just a couple years ago, and it's been good ever since. You know, I'm able to be on a couple of the committees, you know, the scholarship committee and the grant committee, and I had never had an idea exactly what went on there until I got on those committees. And they're such great people, you know, and it's because of your leadership. You know, you selected great people, and they're all good to be around. And I don't think the people of Bay County have any idea how much money that goes through there and how much you've given back to the community through the foundation. And you, like Mr. Barsha said, you'll be replaced, you know, but it's going to be tough. And she'll do a wonderful job. You're succeeded, you know, but you deserve a retirement too. You know, you worked awful hard to get to where you're at, and you know, and Bay County's a better place for it, and the world's a better place for it.
Yes, I thank you very much. When I was called and said, be here, so I slid in. But I have really enjoyed working with Bay County. I believe where you live is what you make of it, and it's giving back. And I've seen so much more collaboration really going on across the board. And it's all due to all of you. It's sharing, it's giving information, and turning around and saying, we're going to work together to make this county a better place to be. And even though I'm leaving, there's lots of citizens that are working diligently to improve the community, but keep in mind there's still a lot of work to do. And so everybody continue. If you wish to participate in committees, do it. That way you're really meeting a lot of different people. I never would have met you gentlemen, and I appreciate you both. I appreciate all of you.
Thank you so much. And here's your little gift from us.
Thank you.
The rose.
Amongst the thorns.
Okay, moving on from the Drain Commission, we have the Kawkawlin River Watershed GLRI grant. Need a motion to receive.
So moved.
Support.
This resolution next. Oh, okay. Well, we received that first, correct? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we need to adopt the resolution number 2017-259.
So moved.
Support?
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, request for reappointment to the Bay County Department on Aging Advisory Committee from Districts 1, 3, 5, and 7. Commissioners have recommended reappointments of the representatives from their districts, and we've received from District 1, Robin Weiss, from District 3, Diane Beamlander, from District 5, Paul Rabideau, and from District 7, Russ Tanner.
So moved.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We got everybody. Next, we'll have the reports and resolutions of the committees from the Ways and Means Committee. Commissioner Lutz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today I bring Resolution 2017-260, which is the bayonet grant renewal for the Sheriff's Office. I move that resolution.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is Resolution 2017-261, the amendment to Pinconning Township Road Patrol Agreement for the Sheriff's Office. I move that resolution.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next is Resolution 2017-262. This is the bayonet grant renewal from the Prosecutor's Office. I move that resolution.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is Resolution 2017-263. It's the Title IV-D IT Security Audit from the Prosecutor's Office. I move that resolution.
Support. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is Resolution 2017-264, the Independent IT Security Audit from the Friend of the Court. I move that resolution.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Next, I bring Resolution 2017-265, the Soil Erosion and Sedimentation Control, the SCSC fee schedule changes from the Drain Commissioner. I move that resolution.
Support. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next, I bring 2017-266, the 2018 remonumentation grant from the Drain Commissioner. I move that resolution.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is Resolution 2017-267, the amendment of independent contractor agreement for veteran service officer. I move that resolution.
Support. Discussion. Commissioner Krieger.
Thank you. Deb?
Yep.
Have we had individuals apply for this position? How are we doing?
Right now, we're waiting for purchasing to prepare the documentation in order to receive, proposals from candidates. So that is the reason for the extension of the current agreement, to allow for sufficient time to accomplish that. So I had received one prior to anything being done, but until the time that it goes out for proposals, we probably won't receive any. So hopefully within the next month they'll start
I was going to say, so maybe January?
That's I have been talking with our purchasing agent, and that's what her timeline is anticipated to be, so I would say.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioner.
I think there's a question on some of the requirements. You have to have veteran service officer training, I'm assuming, and go through the courses. And somebody's told me that there aren't that many people that have that training.
And that's true. One of our recommendations will be that if the candidate does not possess the certification based on the other qualifications that we'd like to see, that they obtain it within a certain period of time. And we have received a communication from the state, the Michigan Department of Veterans Affairs, and they've offered to provide that training for us. So it's out there.
Thank you.
Commissioner Krieger.
So if they're going to go out and seek the right qualifications for what they're being hired for, is that a cost to us or that individual, or is the state picking that up?
You mean as far as the training portion of it?
Correct.
I believe that they will be doing it without a charge. It's to their benefit to provide it as well. Now, there may be additional classes and courses that are offered, off-site by various agencies. And of course, we would take the opportunity to participate in that. But those are very, the fee for those is very minimal. They usually hold those for, a $25 registration fee, and it's held, very inexpensively.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is Resolution 2017-268, the return of the grant funds to the Bay Area Community Foundation, RE Boardwalk Conceptual Rendering Project for Environmental Affairs and Community Development. I move that resolution.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is Resolution 2017-269, the RFP for application firm for continued treatment of the emerald ash borer from the Gypsy Moth program. I move that resolution.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is Resolution 2017-270, Activity Center Site Agreements from the Department of Aging. I move that resolution.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is Resolution 2017-271, Michigan Department of Agricultural Grant from Animal Control. I move that resolution.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is Resolution 2017-272, the transfer of funds from Animal Control Reserve for the Restricted Contributions Sterilization Program for All About Animals for Animal Control. I move that resolution.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is Resolution 2017-273, Payables General Fund. I move that resolution.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
That means paycheck's good, right? Paycheck's good. Next is Resolution 2017-274, Maintenance Agreements for 2018 Budgeted Maintenance Expense for hardware and software for the information systems. I move that resolution.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is Resolution 2017-275, Budget Adjustments from Personnel Department of the Public Defender, Pinconning Park Animal Shelter, Self-Insurance Claims, Prosecutor, and Treasurer. I move that resolution.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next is Resolution 2017-276, transfer up to $200,000 to the Health Fund for the Health Department. I move that resolution.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And that's all I have from Ways and Means, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Lutz. And from Personnel and Human Services, Commissioner Ryder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have Resolution 2017-277, vacancies, 911 Central Dispatch, Health Department, Department on Aging, Environmental Affairs and Community Development, new position with the Health Department. I will move that resolution forward.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution 2017-278, Matter of Balance Program from Department on Aging. I will move that resolution forward.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution 2017-279, agreement for NCQA Patient-Centered Medical Home Recognition Program. I will move that forward.
Support. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution 2017-280, Children's Special Care Services Mini Grant Award Contractual Agreement for CSHCS parent liaison services and community outreach from the health department. I'll move that forward.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That's all we have before us today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryder. Next from the Board of Commissioners, Commissioner Durancheck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Resolution 2017-281, reports of the county executive. I'd like to move this forward.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Reports of the county officials and departments. Mr. County Executive.
I don't have anything. We have a person in the room who's interested in an expedited meeting this afternoon, so I'll pass and take it up to the next meeting.
Thank you.
B, Director of Administrative Services, the revision of the Animal Control Ordinance number 32 to include recommendations from the Best Practices Plan document. Resolution number 217-282. Would you like to speak on that, ma'am? Or no?
No.
Okay, very good.
I'll pull some weight.
I'll move the
here.
resolution. Support.
Discussion. It's a great plan, by the way, I read it.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Corporation Counsel Memorandum of Agreement with MHT, the East Center Ridge Arms, Resolution 217-283. What's your pleasure?
I'll move it for discussion anyway.
We got
Support.
We moved it. Support. Discussion.
Right. The first I've seen it was when I read my packet. And I guess maybe you guys can give us a little bit of information as to where we're going. I saw something about somebody's really anxious about April for some tax credits. And maybe you can give us some information.
Sure, and I actually, there are two individuals from MHT that are present today that are here to give you a general overview of the proposal, as well as some answers to questions that you may have, and some further clarification on numbers. Jason is going to be in just a minute with a printout of the numbers for you, so you can take a look at them in addition as well. At this point in time, the request is to, if you'll note from the memo, the request is simply to give the authority to the chair of the board to enter into a memorandum of understanding, basically to get this proposal moving forward. There are a lot of different moving parts. This is going to involve a great deal of coordination with HUD and with MISHDA and with MHT. And I believe that the application date that they're looking at this point in time is in early April, which is why we're interested in getting just the authority to enter into the MOU at this point in time.
Regardless if it's with this company or any other company. I mean, there must be, I mean, we're not going to take this out to bid or an RFP or anything like this.
No, we are not. And actually, there are very few entities that are actually involved in this type of tax credit conversion. MHT is
There's more than one though, right?
The most prevalent. I'm unaware of what other companies there are out there. I do know that outside counsel has looked into MHT and made a determination that they are the most prevalent.
All I'm saying is that, you know, to read it on Thursday or Friday and not have any background on it, it's a lot of information without a lot of supporting data, you know.
It's definitely a lot of information, which is why they're here today to give you that presentation, and we will get some additional numbers to you as well during the course of the meeting as soon as Jason comes back.
But you're going to find out if there's other folks out there that do this as well.
I can find out if there are other companies that do that, and I'm sure that MHT can actually answer that question as well.
So they're going to speak on that now?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Krieger.
Yeah, just in reading all the material, it was confusing for me because in one paragraph it makes a statement and then down ways you read another piece of information. It's almost like it contradicted itself. So as long as they've got good answers on what liabilities the county would have in pursuing this, that'd be my big concern. So, thank you.
And I just thought I'd add that a recent example of a redevelopment effort was the project at Maplewood Manor in Bay City. And they'll explain a little bit about the amount of HUD and MSHTA money that went into refurbishing that facility, that affordable housing facility. But that's what our goal would be for Center Ridge Arms. It hasn't really been updated or renovated since it opened, so it could be a candidate for hopefully federal and state funding that would make it much more attractive. We'd have hopefully a long waiting list for people to get in to become residents there, but it is, and maybe the director would want to speak to some of the deficiencies that would be corrected should we secure $9 or $10 million to redevelop it.
Okay.
Commissioner McGinn.
Point. Mid-Michigan Community Action Agency has contracted, Garfield Manor here in Bay City, and also up in Clare they have similar facilities, senior living facilities that they've contracted with people to run, and they've done well with both those projects so far. So, I mean, it's a little bit different. They're a different type of agency than we are, but it's a similar type of a setting that they're managing for them. It seems to have worked out pretty good. Thank you.
Who's these guys? I don't know.
You have the floor, sir.
Okay. Hi, my name is Brian Gallagher. I'm with MHT Housing. We are a nonprofit affordable housing developer. We've been in business since 1990, and we specialize, all that we do is affordable housing. And more specifically, we specialize in the low-income housing tax credit industry. And just to give you a little bit of background on what that involves, there's 2 funding rounds that are submitted annually to the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. One is in April and one is October. And so what we do is if we have a project that we think would be a good candidate for low-income housing tax credits, then we put together a tax credit application, which includes a number of third-party reports, market studies, environmental reports, surveys, sometimes plans and specs, depending upon the work that's involved, title work. So there's a number of exhibits that are required, and there has to be financial statements for the sponsor that's submitting the application and also the general contractor that's going to be working on the project also. So what we do is we put these tax credit applications together, we submit them to the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. Tax credits are awarded to projects based upon how they score out, and there's a number of factors that go into how they score out. One of those, as an example, if there's a nonprofit involved, you get extra points for a nonprofit being involved in the development. Walk score is a big part of the points that are submitted. So what we do is we submit these tax credit applications for specific projects. If we are awarded a tax credit reservation, what we do at that point is we take that tax credit reservation and we have an investor that comes and buys those low-income housing tax credits that we receive from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. And that's a federal subsidy that's administered through the state. So we sell these low-income housing tax credits. They're able to be used by companies on a dollar-for-dollar credit basis on their tax liability. And so if we get a $1 million tax credit reservation, those tax credits are good for 10 years. So in a sense, we end up having $10 million of low-income housing tax credits. That's going to be available for a company to write off on their tax liability. So by selling those low-income housing tax credits, if we sell them, like right now we're selling them for like 92 cents on the dollar. So if we get a $1 million reservation of tax credits, $10 million of credits, we sell those credits. So that brings in $9.2 million of what we call tax credit equity into a project. And we use that $9.2 million in combination with a new permanent loan to acquire the physical asset and also do a full renovation on the asset. So we make sure and we have enough money in the deal, because not every deal pencils out to where it works appropriately. So we make sure we have enough money in the deal to do a full renovation that includes full exterior everything from parking lots to striping to landscaping, roofs, on the interior, mechanicals, kitchens, baths, flooring, appliances, you name it, everything's completed. Even the office is fully redone where the staff works, new furniture and fixtures throughout the community. And as part of the deal, we make sure we put a sufficient amount of reserves that's set aside for the property to make sure that it has plenty reserves to start out with, and that's going to continue to make the property last for a number of years. Those tax credits, as I mentioned, are good for 10 years, and there's a 15-year compliance period that is involved with those low-income housing tax credits. And by 15 years compliance is what I mean is that we're required, those tax credits are purchased by an investor, so we're required for 15 years to make sure that that project only rents to low-income housing individuals. And that's because that's basically the reason that we're getting those tax credits. So our management and our compliance is extremely important. So if we have a tenant that moves into the project and that's over income, that doesn't qualify for the area median income for those tax credits, then what happens is we get a form from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority that they send to us, and they would also send one to our investor and the IRS that says this project has an over-income tenant, and they give you a certain number of days to correct that file if there was an error, figure out what's going on or why there's an over-income tenant in there. And we have never had that happen to us in the 27 years we've been in business, because that's how we have our new move-ins double-checked and triple-checked from our compliance department. But what happens is if you end up having an over-income tenant, you lose the low-income housing tax credits on that unit. So what happens is we lose the units, those tax credits on that unit for the 10-year period, and then our investor who paid us that $9.2 million, they'll come back and say, all right, we paid you for tax credits on that unit, you lost the tax credits, so now you've got to refund that back to us. So in our partnership that we're proposing with Bay County is that MHT would be the full guarantor on this project for those low-income housing tax credits for those 15 years. MHT would be the full guarantor on that project for any operating deficits that the project may have over that 15-year period, and also guarantee construction completion. And the way that these deals are done, the investors require to have a guarantor. They require the guarantor to have a large balance sheet, a certain amount of liquidity for each individual project. They require the general contractor that's chosen, which we would propose to have a contractor local in this area to do all of the work and be able to utilize workers from the area for the work that's going to be done. On average, with the projects that we do, we normally do on average anywhere from $20,000 to $35,000 per unit. Some of them go in excess of that. And so it's not spending $35,000 on the interior of that unit. That obviously encompasses everything within the project. So all of, as I had mentioned, the roofs and the appliances and the exterior and whatnot. So we submit this tax credit application, we go out and get the investor and end up renovating the project. So the great thing about it is the residents that live there, all that they notice is that they just get a fully renovated unit on the interior and the exterior of the unit. So it's all upside for the residents. And we have no dislocation of residents when we do our acquisition and rehabilitations, which is what this project would be. So we set up hospitality units to where the residents are able to go to. So we'll ensure that their kitchen is knocked out. If they're having their cabinets replaced in their kitchen, then we help them pack up their belongings if they want. We help them pack up their belongings. We move them out of there. Contractor comes in, removes the cabinets, and we get them back in there the same day. So they're out, for most of the day in their hospitality unit or elsewhere. They're able to come right back into their unit by the end of the day, and they have new cabinets. Come in the next day and finish the any plumbing or flooring that needs to be done in that kitchen. And we do handle the same way for the bathrooms and the rest of the unit. So the tenants are not displaced at all, which is a good thing. They have a fully renovated unit, and it's a great benefit to every project that we do. And the best part about it is, as I mentioned, these are good for 10 years, and we have a 15-year compliance period. So all of the assets that MHT owns, and this one would be a partnership, we would propose 49%, Bay County would be 51%. In 15 years, what we do, if this partnership was created today and it's Center Ridge Arms LDHA, in 15 years, we would propose to submit another tax credit application to the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, and it would be under Center Ridge Arms 2 LDHA. So what happens is if we got, I know I'm getting ahead of myself because we haven't got the first reservation, but this is how we work with all of our projects. So in 15 years, we would propose the same, and we get another tax credit reservation. So Center Ridge Arms sells the asset to the new entity, which is Center Ridge Arms 2, and we do the project all over again. So in 15 years, the project gets fully renovated again. So all of our projects that we have, I mean, a big motto that we have with MHT is we don't want anybody driving into any of our communities and knowing that they're affordable housing. We just take pride in keeping our properties updated. They're fully renovated every 15 years. We have plenty in reserves to keep them going over that time. And we want anybody that comes to our communities to look like it's a market rate community. We don't want it to look like people come in and say, oh, that must be a low-income housing project. And all of our projects they've all been renovated within a 15-year period. We're proposing, this project alone has $500,000 that's going into reserves, and that's at the beginning of the project. So there's plenty of reserves that are in there to cover the project, and part of the reason we do that is, we want to make sure that there's not going to be operating deficits over that 15-year period that we have to fund, and there's reserves in place for that. But if those reserves are ever burned through, the investor requires that we're on the hook for any operating deficit. So the investors come in. I haven't talked a whole lot about them, but they're everything from, John Hancock Life Insurance Company. We've had Chevron. A lot of our investors are banks. PNC Bank has been a big investor, Bank of America, Huntington Bank. And the reason the banks love investing in these projects is because they have CRA needs. So they're required to invest in certain areas around the country. And whether it be a bank branch or something else, and this is one of those something else's, they're able to invest in a low-income housing tax credit project. So they meet their CRA needs, and in addition to it, they get low-income housing tax credits that they can offset their tax liability. And then the third thing they get is, even though the properties are generating cash flow, this is projected to generate $70,000 a year, there's still going to be tax losses from the depreciation. So they get the tax credits, they get their CRA requirements met, and they also get the benefit of the tax losses from the depreciation.
You talked about rehabilitating or renovating all of the units. Does this also address the boiler system and all the mechanical, the electrical, and all that as well?
It does, 100%, yes. And with the majority of our projects, we put a HUD-insured loan on them. And as part of that application process with the HUD-insured loan, it requires that we have, actually HUD, the lender actually picks who does it, but there's a comprehensive needs assessment that is done, a full physical assessment of the project in and out. And that outside third-party comprehensive needs assessment determines what work needs to be completed on this property to make sure it's going to last for the next 20 years. So that's kind of our starting point. Like, we know exactly what we like to do in kitchens and baths and things that are going to last, that have been successful in our projects, but we're not even able to decide ourselves on if the boilers, what boilers need to be replaced, what roof needs to be replaced. The comprehensive needs assessment determines that. and what the lifespan is of certain things. I know that this project, for instance, recently has had a new boiler put in. I believe there's a couple boilers. So if we come into a project, we don't want to throw money away if we've got a boiler that's only 2 years old and a new boiler. So we're able to take those funds and apply them to other areas of the community. And some of them just end up being upgrades. But it's a really great program. I've been with the company for 14 years now. And I always had a history of property management and in multifamily housing. And when I started here 14 years ago, I had never known what low-income housing tax credits are. And it's a national program. It's in all 50 states. So it's not just here within Michigan. A little tidbit of information, just as everybody's been aware of the tax reform that's going on. That's something that our industry's been pretty insulated. Even when there's downturns in the economy back in 2008 and whatnot, all of our properties survived. We had, obviously, unfortunately, there was even more of a need in some cases for affordable housing. But with the tax reform that's going on and the corporate tax rate, which is currently 35% and projected to go down to 20%, 22%, none of us know exactly what it's going to be. What's happened is that's driven the pricing down in our low-income housing tax credit. So it sounds crazy, but we've had projects in the past that we've sold tax credits for over $1. That's how competitive it's been with some of the banks that need their CRA needs. So we say, here's $1 tax credits, and they pay us $1.01 or $1.02. Now with the tax reform that's going on now, the market is not sure exactly where everything's going to pan out. So a lot of our investors have been pricing their models at, 20% or 22% or 25% because they just don't know where it's going to sit. So our pricing has went down. So now we're in around that 90, 92 cent range. So that's when all of our numbers then that we're running.
I just need to ask you, I got to ask questions when I think about it or else I forget them. So you talk about these 15-year agreements. So you've been doing this for X number of years already. Have you had any that you haven't renewed? That said, the projects that you did that you said, hey, we're done after 15 years, we're out of here. Or are they pretty much automatic? Is it automatic renewal on these?
So there's the tax credits are, and that's a great question, by the way. So the tax credits are for 10 years. The compliance period that we have on the tax credits that's required, and it's not only with our investor, it's through the Michigan State Housing Development Authority and the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, is 15 years. Basically what that 15 years is that you can't lose tax credits on that unit. If you keep it compliant for 15 years, then you're home free and they can't go back and have any what they call recapture of tax credits. But what they do have is an extended use agreement that's issued to keep this property affordable even after the tax credit period and the compliance period is burned off. So after 15 years, the tax credits are gone, the compliance period is over. We still have an extended use agreement that requires us to keep the property affordable. Now, if you want to, the only two things that can extinguish that extended use agreement is, in one case would be foreclosure, which, knock on wood, that has never happened to us and we never would plan on that happening. And the other way to do that is you actually apply with Michigan State Housing Development Authority to get that extended use agreement released. And it's about a 18 to 24 month process, and what happens in that period is you basically apply to the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. They actually market the property to try to see if they can sell the property to somebody who can make it work and keep it affordable. And if they don't have any takers over that period, then they basically come back. And then if they do find one, you have the right of first refusal to do that, yourself or as another entity, a new entity. If nobody comes along and purchases that or has an interest in purchasing that and says that I can make the numbers work and by keeping it affordable, say if there was no Section 8 or whatever, if the reserves were depleted, then they end up, that's how you end up getting that extended use agreement
So tax credits
extinguished.
can only be gotten one time, or can they get more?
The tax credits?
Yes.
No, they can as many times as you want. So we had a number of projects that we purchased. We purchased 5 projects.
I just mean in that specific building, can they only be used once?
Oh, no.
Multiple times?
Yeah, every 15 years it can be done.
I guess,
So, yeah.
that's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah, so we had just started, this program started in 1986 from the Tax Reform Act. And our company started in 1990. 1991 is when we bought our properties, our first properties. And we had those for 15 years. And so after the 15 years, we applied for new rounds of tax credits. And re-renovated all those properties. So we're kind of in that second stage of all of our properties. Now we don't even have, we'd like to go out and find new properties, but we also have all of our properties in-house that are now beyond that 15-year period, and we're getting new rounds of tax credits. We've got, what do we got, three applications going in, that are going in now for 3 projects that we have that we originally bought, renovated, got tax credits, and now we're doing the second round on them again.
What determines, the amount of money that you're going to put in to rehab an apartment? How do you, so it can't be the same all over, so how do you come up with that number? And then when you do come up with a number, if it's less, what do you do if it's probably going to be less, I would think, than the number I've heard so far on this one. If it was less, what happens to the overflow, the extra money there?
Okay, that's a great question too. So as part of this competitive application process with MSHDA, they have something that they call cost containment. And they only have so many low-income housing tax credits that they can issue. So they only want their low-income housing tax credits. They do it on the scoring basis. They only want their low-income housing tax credits to be utilized on the best properties, and they want the best bang for their buck for this federal subsidy. So they incorporated a few years back this item of cost containment, and it basically, you can get, if you're putting too much cost into a project based upon the number of units and the square footage, you can actually get negative points. And we calculate this when we're submitting the tax credit application so we know exactly where we sit. So we can actually get negative points, and it's just a simple taking the total development costs and dividing it, by the project. And, so you can get negative points, or if you're very efficient, or if you have a project that doesn't need a whole lot of renovation, then you can actually get positive points because you're putting, less cost into it. And, the other costs that I haven't mentioned that go into it, there's the rehab cost. For this project, we budgeted $30,000 per unit of hard costs going in. In addition to that, there's builder overhead and profit that goes to the builder. There's third-party reports. I mentioned all the third-party reports we have to get done to apply for MSHDA. That actually ends up getting reimbursed to the project once we eventually close. So there's third-party reports in there. There's reserves that are built in there. There's a developer fee that's built into the project. For this project, it's an $850,000 developer fee. It's based upon, and it's a simple calculation. It's 7.5% of the acquisition costs and 7.5% of the reserves that you set aside for the project, and 15% of all the other costs that are involved in the project, so the rehab and the third-party reports. So there's an $850,000 developer fee that's calculated in here. Trying to think of some of the other, there's tax credit fees that you have to pay to the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. There's an application fee. If you get awarded, you got to pay a 6% fee of whatever that tax credit is amount to MSHDA. So there's all of the costs are listed in here that we have. There's construction and there's loan fees to the lender. So all of those costs are included in the total budget for the project. So you just gotta, when you submit everything, you can't put, we wouldn't want to be going in and putting in high-end Thermador, Viking appliances and granite countertops, and but we look for the most affordable, best products because we want things that are going to last for 15 to 20 years but we don't want to put unnecessary costs into a project that are going to hurt us on that cost containment.
Commissioner Kern.
Now, how do we know what that facility out there needs, number one? But secondly, you talked about, people driving by not knowing that it's a low-income property. Well, how do you take a brick building and make it look like it's, how do you change that with some of these dollars that you're proposing?
Yep. No, it's a good question. In regards to how do we know what goes into it, so we start out with, as we did for this project, we're just very in the preliminary stages, so we haven't, ran forward with any third-party reports. If we were granted approval, we would immediately start ordering those third-party reports.
What third-party, because I'm sure it gets inspected every year, but I've never heard anything about the property that it needs anything.
Right. Well, the third-party reports would be the comprehensive needs assessment.
Who does that?
That's the firm that our lender, a third-party firm that our lender would require to be done. That's required for a HUD loan, which is what we propose on this asset.
But it's not something that needs to be done today.
No, it would only be if we were applying for low-income housing tax credits.
I understand. I'm saying is this whole project. I mean, it sounds like it's a way to renovate the facility, but I've never heard anything that said, well, we got to do this because we're having these problems. I haven't heard that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know that Zach is here, and he's been a big help with us, and he's overseeing and managing the project. And the reason the Maplewood Manor is a project that we partnered with the Bay City Housing Commission on, and it's a very similar instance. Mr. Barship brought that up. And so with public housing, what they end up having there is what we find that projects run into, and I can't speak for Zach on this, but is that you're not able to, over time, you're just not able to do full renovations on properties, because on public housing projects, you're not able to get a new HUD-insured loan on the project unless it has another form of subsidy to actually go ahead and renovate the project. So if this project here was to go and get a new loan on the project, it wouldn't be enough to renovate the full asset. So, the third-party reports that we do, like I said, the comprehensive needs assessment, because I think just based upon the age of the building, there's a number of things. I know that, for instance, the parking lot was just done out there, and it was just, that's something that could have been fully done with the tax credit proceeds, but it's just something that the project needed. Just from our history that we've seen, and it's a great question, and until a comprehensive needs assessment came in, we wouldn't know exactly what fully needs to be done, because we haven't sent any of our construction guys through the whole building and got the age of the mechanicals and whatnot. From the drive-by on the outside, I think the project does, it's being well maintained, and right now with ours, the brick, we wouldn't be doing anything to the brick on the building, and there's a lot of things, unfortunately, with roofs and different things like that you can't see from the street. But with ours, with driving by and pulling up, I mean, it's on a big part of ours is asphalt, curbs, striping, signs, landscaping, awnings on the exterior, gutters, new windows. Right. Those are kind of the exterior items.
You're proposing that this would be done over a 10 or 15-year period? No,
this would all be done within 12 months. A full renovation.
Full renovation?
Yeah, it would all be done within 12 months. Yeah.
If we chose not to do that, how does HUD put a roof on? We need a roof. We put it in the budget, and they provide that, right? Well, they're just not going to let that roof.
No, I mean, Jeremy, or Zach, do you want to speak at all to that from what you found for your?
With our capital funding that we have to apply for every 5 years,
right.
What we're starting to see is the capital fund going down because of the cuts out it's going to take. So we have to prepare a 5-year, what do we need, kind of a wish list, and then HUD will either approve or not approve us to get the money for our capital. That's not our operating, just our capital. For instance, right now we're at $88,000. They're giving us $88,601 per year. We have to go back. Now, I never made it. We're coming up on our 5 years in 2019. So what we have to do is I have to look at how was our roof, okay? And we did have GLRI a few months ago come out. We had an issue with the roof. The roof is just the ballpark. If we had to replace the whole thing, it would be over $300,000. And so HUD just won't give us the money for that. There's small grants you can apply for. You're not guaranteed anything. They base it off of this. They base it off of your capacity and your previous capital improvements. And unfortunately, Center Ridge hasn't gone through a lot of capital improvements in the last 10 years. We've had elevators put in the parking lot just recently and the new boiler system. But they look at, well, if we're giving you this money, we would expect you to be using it on building needs. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened to the full capability that should have happened. So our funding has gone down for capital. So the nice thing about capital too is if we have a reserve, if we have money on the side, we can take our capital and put it into our operating budget to boost what we have in our bank account, so to speak, to pay our bills, to keep the lights on, so to speak. So HUD is very strict as far as giving us money to do needs improvements based off of history. So what I've recently done is I haven't been able to submit anything yet. We'll have to go for approval to do a revision on our capital because we have needs in the building. We have an intercom system that needs to be replaced, and that's over $15,000. Little things like that. And at the age of the building, over time, accidents have happened. We've had floods that have wiped out electrical panels that have never been replaced or repaired. So not having the money at our disposal it makes it a little tough for us to make these building improvements that the residents, require, that we require, building code requires. So just yesterday we had REAC out for our building inspection. Now this was my first inspection with REAC. I haven't received the report yet. I'll make sure everybody receives a report of it so you know what they look for. We did okay. We did get hit in 3 areas, but we fixed the problems. They were very small problems. But they don't come in and look at, the condition of the roof. It was under snow, so they won't go digging for it. They don't look at the sprinkler system. They just want to make sure there is a sprinkler system. They don't look at the electrical. They don't look at the front doors. They don't look at the intercoms. They just look at physical issues that could happen that affect the residents. So there is a lot of the building that could be done. We just don't have the capital right now to do it, and I'm still trying to find out how we can get more capital because we will still continue to receive capital when we do our next 5-year assessment. So that will be coming up next year. I will start doing the research for that capital. I just don't know with the cuts that HUD wants to make. I'm hearing somewhere around $2 or $6 billion nationwide, what that's going to do to us. We're considered a small PHA, so I can really see our 88,000 turning into 70,000 or possibly more. So, but it's an as-needed basis. We just take priority and we go from the top down to the bottom.
Sorry to put you on this. I keep calling Zach Jeremy because I know the maintenance guy, but the reason I referred to Zach on that is because, I mean, to be frank, we don't own, public housing is owned by, government authorities, so we don't own any public housing. So I wasn't exactly sure, how his draw is for his capital needs, which is why I just called on him for that. But some benefits to, so this is what happened. This is why the Bay City Housing Commission, why we had got the low-income housing tax credits on that project and got an investor and fully renovated that project. We did about a $6 million, I believe it was, rehab on that project. And it was a very smooth project. We had a great working relationship with the Bay City Housing Commission. It's been a very successful project for us. If anyone knows anybody over there, I definitely ask you to reach out to them and talk to them and ask them, how we were as a partner. It was under the exact same scenario that we're proposing here, the 51 and 49%. And some of the benefits too for this project, from a cash perspective, is this project would be sold into the partnership for an agreed upon appraised value. And so those sale proceeds go to the county. And then our developer fee that we're proposing in this deal is an $850,000 developer fee, and $550,000 of that is a cash developer fee, which would be paid within the first 18 months. The remaining $300,000 is what we call a deferred developer fee, and that's paid out over cash flow until that $300,000 is paid off. And our projection for this project right now is that it's going to cash flow about $70,000 a year. So our investors that come in for the tax credits, they don't want any of the cash flow. They don't care about the cash flow. They're in it for tax purposes. So if they get cash flow, they just got more income coming to them. So they're in it for usually their CRA needs, the low-income housing tax credits, and the losses for their tax return from the depreciation. So they say, take all the cash. We don't care about the cash. They actually do have a small asset management fee, which is a few $1,000s a year that they charge, because they usually come out to the project once a year and do an inspection, and they inspect the tax return at the end of the year to make sure they're getting their low-income housing tax credits that they thought they were going to get. And outside of that, we never see the investor. So the general partner, which is Bay County and MHT Housing, actually Bay County would be the 51%. They're the ones who make the calls on who the management company is going to be, who the audit firm is going to be, any decisions that need to be made for the project. We're always there, for any guidance, or we have a great working relationship with the other partners that we have in other deals. Most of our deals, we don't have partners in. We do have a handful of deals that we have partners in, and it's usually been great partners that in many cases have came to us and said, we have this project, do you have any ideas? And in some cases they've already heard about low-income housing tax credits, and in other cases they haven't. And we kind of, we run the numbers. Peter does a great job of running our numbers and just seeing if it even is a good project to qualify, because some projects just don't qualify based upon where their rents are at, what area they're in. Maybe if they're too much work needs to be put into them and we can't come up with enough construction proceeds. So not every property is a qualifier. If it has a horrible walk score, and we just think, it's not going to score out, it's just not going to be a good candidate. Maplewood Manor was a great candidate. Center Ridge Arms, we feel, is also a great candidate. And it's just, when you think about it, it's really an amazing subsidy. Obviously it's ultimately it comes from tax revenue, but to be able to go out and sell these low-income housing tax credits to an investor and have that money come in to use 100% to renovate a property, it's just, there's no program out there that's better for it. And as I said, somebody can refinance a property and get a little, maybe a larger mortgage out of it and get a little money to work with to do a renovation, but they'll never be able to come up with this kind of money.
You have a question?
Yes. So Brian, just so I understand, because I'm just trying to, it's a complex
right.
deal to
Yes.
bring it down to simple terms. So basically, Center Ridge Arms, which is currently, because we're in Act 139 County and we have our housing department, it's actually owned by the county. We would have to convert our Center Ridge Arms housing units to Section 8 housing, correct?
Correct, yes.
And that's because in order to get these credits through MSHDA, it has to be privately owned. It can't be government owned, correct?
Correct. So yep.
So we would convert to Section 8 long-term Section 8 housing. The county would, according to this proposal, sell the actual building to this new business entity that's owned 51% by the county and 49% by MHD.
Yeah. If I could just clarify two quick things on that. Well, one of them is just to add to what you said. They'd be converted to project-based Section 8 that we would get through what's called a RAD conversion with HUD. And what it is it's a project-based Section 8 contract. So if that Section 8 contract is attached to the building, so if a resident moves out of the building, they're not taking that, what we call a sticky voucher with them. That Section 8 stays with that unit, it's by unit. So the project always has that. And our investors, they don't want to get into a project unless we have a project-based Section 8 contract that's available for that 15-year period. And we've been successful in our projects of getting 20-year contracts and with the RAD conversions for our projects. So we end up getting a 20-year project-based Section 8 contract. It would be for Center Ridge Arms, which would lock in that project-based subsidy for 20 years for the project. And then you brought up a good point too. One thing I left off on the investor. So the county would sell this entity to Center Ridge Arms LDHA, and the reason it's a limited dividend housing association, you're required to have that type of entity with low-income housing tax credits as part of the program. So it's a limited dividend housing association, limited partnership. And that limited partnership is made up of a limited partner and a general partner. And that limited partner is that investor that I mentioned. So it would be one of the banks that I had mentioned, or there's companies all over that do different types of businesses that invest in low-income housing tax credits. But they would become the limited partner in the deal. So they would own 99.99% of the partnership. And the general partner, which would be made up of 51% Bay County, 49% MHT, would be 0.01%. And the reason that the investor or limited partner is 99.99% is because the low-income housing tax credits have to flow with the ownership percentages. So, being nonprofits as we are, we have no need for any low-income housing tax credits, and plus when we're selling those low-income housing tax credits. So the way that that investor gets them is through the ownership. So at the end of the year, there's a partnership tax return done. There's a K-1 that's issued for our limited partner. There's a K-1 that's issued for the general partner. And that limited partner K-1 would have their tax credits. They would get 99.99% of those. We would get 0.01, which we wouldn't use, and it'd be very minimal. It'd be a couple dollars. So I just wanted to clarify that on that.
And so this entity that now owns Center Ridge Arms is going to pay Bay County for the appraised value of the building?
Correct.
Correct?
Yep. There would be, at the closing, there would be a purchase agreement from the new LDHA, and as the purchaser, and the seller would be Bay County, and that would happen at closing, yes.
Okay, and the proceeds that are earned on Center Ridge Arms throughout that next 15-year period would be split between the two entities, being Bay County and MHT?
Correct, 51-49.
Okay.
Yep.
At the end of that 15-year period, you discussed, and you could say you can either renew and ask for new tax credits, or there's the potential at that point in time, because it is extended Section 8 housing, that the property could be sold if that were to be Bay County's desire at that point in time.
Correct, yeah. And what we have in our memorandum of understanding is that the right of first refusal would stay with Bay County. So at the end of 15 years, if Bay County had said, it could just continue on. Nothing has to happen at that point. But at the end of the 15 years, if Bay County decided that, hey, you've been a great partner, would you be interested in putting together another tax credit application, then we could do that. Or Bay County could say, you know what, over the last 15 years, we've been training our people, and we're schooled on the low-income housing tax credit program, and we think we've got a couple other projects under our belt, and maybe we want to do it. Then Bay County would be able to do it. The barriers to entry for this industry are tough, because you get experience points for the low-income housing tax credit project that you did in the past, but we've gave that right of first refusal to Bay County, so it'd be totally after the 15 years what Bay County wanted to do, or sell the asset. Because even though there's an extended use agreement, it doesn't mean the project can't be sold either. I didn't clarify that earlier. Somebody else could buy it they would have to keep it affordable because it has an extended use agreement unless they went to MISHDA to get that released through that process.
And the intention of this project is that the Bay County employees that are currently at Center Adjournment would continue to stay at Center Adjournment, and it would actually be Bay County that continues to manage the property.
Yes, that is correct. We would not propose to bring in any of our staff. We have our own property management company in-house. We did the exact same thing with Maplewood Manor. None of the staff turned over there. They still run the project. They have the exact same staff. We're just there to assist in any compliance they need. Audits at the end of the year, you know, we work with the audit firms.
Let me ask a question. 51% you talked about, we would sell 49% to you, for example. Is there a cash value on that building that's the county's or that's the federal? You know, I don't understand that.
The building would be appraised prior to the sale,
Right.
So we would appraise the building.
Do we own the building or do the feds own the building?
Well, right now, we own the building, and then once it's appraised and sold, it would be sold to this new business entity that is owned, that 51% by Bay County and 49% by MHT.
So 100% of those, 100% of those proceeds for that sale would go to Bay County at the sale, so, yeah.
And Bay County would still retain a 51% ownership in the building. At the end of the 15-year period, is the building free and clear of any HUD loans?
It's not. We would propose to, the loan that would be on this project would be the HUD loans. We usually go to HUD for our loans because they provide the best terms. Their loans are 35 and 40-year terms and also 35 and 40-year amortizations. They have a couple different programs. Their rates are in many cases south of 4%. So it takes a lot of work to get them. It's a big application process. It's about a 6-month process from beginning to end to get a HUD loan closed. But they're the best loan product out there, and it provides the best cash flow for the property.
Did you guys, when you did the other property in the city for the Bay City Housing Commission, was that sold as well?
Correct, yeah.
Who got that money?
Bay City Housing Commission.
Bay City Housing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And are they obligated to, or would we be obligated with the money we receive to do anything with it, or is it limited on what we can do with it?
From our standpoint and the program standpoint, there's no restrictions. I don't know within Bay County if there's any restrictions on your guys' side, but yeah, from our standpoint and the program standpoint, the seller does whatever they want to with the proceeds. There's no restrictions.
I'm talking about what the government would say. You know,
And I don't know if you're referring in my memo that I submitted to the board that there were some restrictions on use of the funds from HUD. I believe that's from not from the proceeds of the sale, but from the proceeds that you receive throughout the course of the project over the next 15 years. So the sale of the building in and of itself is just simply a sale.
Yeah, and the cash flow, so the developer fees are used, use as you may, and then the cash flow, the way that's calculated every year with it having a HUD mortgage on it, we have a HUD audit, and the auditors, which is most of our projects, there's just a simple surplus cash page that's at the end of every audit, and it takes what your operating cash is and your security deposit cash, and it subtracts out your security deposit liability and any current payables, and whatever that net number is surplus cash, and then that's distributed. That, as I mentioned, that small asset management fee, the limited partner, and then $59.49. And that money that you get, again, there's no restriction from the project standpoint in the program. I don't know, not being within the county, I don't know when money comes in from different avenues, how you guys are required to use that or whatever, but.
And how are who receives the developer fees?
The developer fees would be split 51-49. 51 Bay County and 49 MHT. And the developer fee, the only thing I left off, and I apologize, I know I've probably been around, back and forth all around, but I know I'm just trying to explain as much of the program as possible. But the developer fee is, you know, they allow you within the program because they say there's not going to be a developer like MHT that's going to go out and do all of these projects if they're not able to make any money to continue their mission. So they allow this developer fee calculation that's in there. And the only piece I left off on the numbers in the pro forma is the way that those tax credits are calculated is it's based upon how much money you actually put into the project. So the more money you pay for an acquisition and the more money you put into a rehab, the more basis you have. You just literally take those dollars and multiply it by the tax credit percentage, and that's how you come up with how much tax credits you can get for the property. So, you know, the first thing, you know, so the more money you put into it, the more tax credits you get out of it. But as I had mentioned earlier, you got to be, you know, you got to be cautious in how much money you put into it, because we go back to that cost containment issue, and we don't want to score negative points because we want to make sure it's competitive. So I didn't mention that earlier, but that's actually how the credits themselves are calculated.
And assuming that the county were to enter into this MOU and you began the process of trying to go through the RAD conversion and putting in an application through MSHA for the tax credits, if those applications, either of those applications were turned down, what's Bay County's liability under the terms of the MOU? Are we looking at potentially paying any costs, fees, or any dollars at all?
There is no risk or liability. We have built into the MOU that MH, generally with our tax credit applications we submit, they're usually about this thick without the environmental. We usually just rubber band an environmental report on top. And as I had mentioned, the application itself is probably only about this big, but it's the we've got to go out and get investors' proposals even before we submit the tax credit application, because MSHA won't give a tax credit reservation unless you have everything ready to go. You've got to have a lender that's already looked at the project. You've got to have an investor that's looked at the project, made sure everything pencils out. So we have our lender letters in there, our investor letters, their pro formas, which MSHA also requires, and all of those third-party reports that I had mentioned. And we generally have about $40,000 in a tax credit application that we submit, and that doesn't include any labor within our office. That's just strictly costs that we've paid out. And unfortunately, if we don't get a tax credit application, it's only done twice a year, and we just do it the next time around. So if we do it in April, and if we're not successful, then if given the approval by, you know, by this group, then we would be right back in October and submitting again for that same. And there's certain reports that need to be within 6 months. So in a lot of cases, we have to pay for updates of certain third-party reports or get updated letters. But for the most part, that application is complete, and we may tweak it a little bit. Or if something changes with a walk score, if we're able to find out where we can get a little more points, maybe spend a little less money on the rehab. We do everything we can to get every single point that goes into that tax credit application without sacrificing the project. But we resubmit, but we've been extremely lucky with our applications, and I think it's just due to the fact that we pick projects that we feel are going to do really well in the application process. And part of it is there's 2 funding rounds a year, and you just don't know who's going to submit tax credit applications. There's a lot of owners out there that submit their, you know, that will submit their applications, and you just don't know if they're going to submit at the same time that we do, so you don't know where all the scores are going to come in at. After you submit, within a few weeks, MSHA issues, you know, like a 6-page report, and it lists what all the projects came in at and what their scores are at, so you have some idea. But it's only a self-score, so then MSHA scores it itself. And, you know, they might say, well, this property scored 100, but after we went up through the whole report, it's really only scoring a 95. So you just don't know every funding round what's going to be there and what's not going to be there, if it's going to be a big application or a small application. So
What could go wrong? You heard all the upsides, so what's the downside? Not everything's perfect, so, you know, why?
Right.
Well, what's something that could really throw a wrench in this? Or is there nothing?
You know, I mean, the only downside, which would fall on MHT, is if, you know, the financial projections that were put together didn't pan out. So I mean, that wouldn't happen anytime quickly, but say in 10 years, utility expenses have skyrocketed. We've had the city of Detroit, which has came out with new sewer and water fees that have, you know, so if there's things like that, but it'd have to be, you know, there's always costs that can happen that are outside of our control. And if that happens, and if we burn through the reserves at the property, then, and the project needs money, then MHT is the guarantor. So we're going to be looked at to have to fund in those reserves. The only other downside is if you get that nasty form that MSHDA sends out if you have over-income residents that move in at the property. But we are so strict on our move-ins, and we've been doing this for so long, we just ensure. That's one thing where, even though the county would continue to manage, that's one place that we would want to help insert and review the files for the move-ins because they're just so critical with the low-income housing tax credit projects. But outside of that, I mean, that's really about it, to be honest with you.
Commissioner Lutz. I got a couple.
Okay.
So we're going to take this building and make it a Section 8 building, so that all the rents can be garnered under Section 8 housing, right? That's the whole plan. And we're going to sell our building to the new entity, which has a limited partner.
Correct.
In addition to us to the partner.
Correct.
Okay. The limited partners in there, and what are they bringing to the table?
They're bringing their equity to the table. So they're buying their, you know, and they're getting something in return for it, obviously. They're getting their low-income housing tax credits.
Right.
So they're buying those low-income housing tax credits. So they're getting that in return. And generally, recently, they've been going for about a 5% return on their money is what. So they have their own financial projection models that they'll send to us, but they'll take out all the formulas, and we don't see what their returns are. So they are getting, that's what they're getting for it. You know, but the main thing that they're bringing in is their equity. They're buying that. But the good thing is, you know, they're bringing, so for this deal here, we've got them coming in with $5.6 million. So they're bringing in $5.6 million, and they're getting something in return. They're getting a 5% return on their low-income housing tax credits.
Okay, they're bringing in $5.6 million, which will be used for what?
That'll be used for the acquisition, all of the development costs. So we don't have a separate bucket for, so we've got a permanent loan that's HUD insured of $1.7 million. So, and the acquisition price we have estimated in here is 1.7. That's kind of similar, but we don't say the HUD loan is going to pay for the acquisition price, or we don't say the HUD loan is going to pay for part of the rehab. We just have this bucket of sources, and the bucket of sources is $51 from Bay County and $49 from us because we have to make a $100 capital contribution. That's the only money you guys would actually be out at the get-go, would be $51. And then the equity would come in from the investor, and then the permanent loan would come in. So all of those sources are used to pay for all of the total development costs. And those total development costs are the acquisition price, the rehab, all the third-party reports, the developer fee, the reserves that are funded, the tax credit fees paid to MSHDA.
Okay. And then we talked about anticipated income from the project. Now that's just going to be from the rents, correct?
Correct.
And that, of course, varies if it's 100% occupancy or what vacancy rate or what do we have now?
Right now, after the first month, we'll be back at 100%. Right now, we're at 80% occupied.
Okay.
And we have a continuous list of about 15 to 20 people waiting to get in.
Okay, and are all of our current resident, Section 8?
We have no Section 8 right now.
Oh, so we had to displace all those people in the building?
No, no. They could, I believe, if I'm understanding correctly, now I could be wrong because I'm not too familiar with Section 8. But the way I was understanding it is they, and maybe you can help me with this too, would either be grandfathered in or they would just have to apply for the Section 8 voucher program to be subsidized. This we will convert to a bad program, whereas right now we're simply PHA.
Right, so but if they're not, that goes against us.
Yeah, well, with Section 8, it's the tenants pay 30% of their rent, and right now
it's the same.
It's the same, so it's the same requirement. So they still pay 30% of their rent under the Section 8 program. So their rent amount that they pay would not change.
Well, Section 8 is based on income.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And you brought up a good point on the vacancy rate. With generally the projects that we have, depending upon where they're at, we normally have a 7% vacancy factor is what the investors require in MISTA, but with a project-based Section 8, they let us take it down to 5%. So as Zach mentioned, with the occupant or the vacancy level is much lower on that. So we end up we're projected to have cash flow of $70,000 at the project with a 5% vacancy. But what we generally find on all of our project-based Section 8 properties is our cash flow is much higher than what our projections are, which is great for the general partner. But our investors require a 5% vacancy level. They just don't want to see anything lower than that. But in reality, with project-based Section 8, there's no reason you shouldn't always be full, really. You usually always have a waiting list.
All of our residents right now are also required that it is an income-based facility. Yeah, they pay the same amount, and it's both required based on income, so you have to be low income in order to do our payments and returns.
Okay. So our out-of-pocket costs are going to be $51.
Correct. Guarantee you.
Commissioner Kuhn. So reading the recommendation, if we approve this, it looks to me like this project is going forward.
The application process would start.
I mean, it sounds like a good deal, but sometimes sounds too good to be true. Does it have to be, addressed at this time, or is there does anybody else have any other questions?
My response just on the timing is that because the application process is so very complex, and because we have to undergo a certain number of surveys, and we also would have to go through the application for the RAD conversion, if we're looking at doing this by the April deadline, time is of the essence just in order to get the application process started. Again, if the application isn't granted, the project doesn't go forward and the county doesn't pay any expense. There is a provision in the MOU regarding the termination of the MOU that would have to be negotiated between the parties because there were some questions. I don't think that that's going to be an issue, and the board chair would not sign any memorandum of understanding to get this application process started until outside counsel gave him the approval that the memorandum of understanding was in an appropriate format.
Mr. Redmond.
Yes, this is a very significant and long-term complex project. But tonight, this is the first we've seen anything in writing. I requested something in writing, anything about 3 weeks ago. In this recommendation, the board is being asked to approve a memorandum of understanding, to approve any future agreements that haven't been written and memorandum of understanding they haven't seen, and to approve budget adjustments that don't exist yet. So would there be a problem with putting this off a month and we be provided that information?
So the only agreement, the memorandum of understanding, if that was signed as it is, or if there was any modifications, That would end up being executed, and then at the time that if the project received a tax credit reservation and we were able to move forward at that point, that memorandum of understanding would be converted into an operating agreement between MHT and Bay County. But the framework of that operating agreement would look a little different just because it's an operating agreement and not a memorandum of understanding. But all of the details within the memorandum of understanding would be exactly what is in the operating agreement. So there wouldn't be any change there. I mean, you bring up a good point in regards to, you know, what makes this one a little more complex is the RAD conversion, because that takes some time to do. There's a couple meetings, there's notifications that go out to the residents. There needs to be 2 separate meetings with all the residents with questions, Q&A sessions with the residents in regards to that. And then from the tax credit application standpoint, we end up getting lenders on board and investors on board. And by no means, please don't take it the wrong way, because by no means am I trying to force this through by any means. But we would, if we lost another month, we would probably have to push it off to the October funding round. I just don't think we'd probably be able to make that April 1st funding.
But you do understand the need for us to have information.
Mm-hmm. What other information do you think would be beneficial?
Anything you said tonight, if we'd have had 3 weeks ago in writing. And all I'm saying is we need to do our due diligence.
Oh, with the,
I like the concept generally.
Right, with the information you have now?
Well, we were given this just tonight.
Right.
We've seen, other than the recommendation that they received last week, late last week, we've seen nothing in writing what they're going to commit to, that it's a multi-million-dollar project. That's all I'm suggesting. That's up to the board.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm just kind of thinking that, next week we have to have another board meeting because of the budget. So, in a week, can we maybe get some more information? By next week, it's probably not going to make any difference, right? Or is it?
I don't think that a week would make a big difference, and Brian, I can get with you over.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we're available.
Does that work with the commission? I mean, it's up to us as a body to do, like Bob said, to do our due diligence and to make sure, like I have trouble spending $50, over a day, and now we're asking to do this. It makes me a little nervous, Commissioner Krieger.
So I'd make a motion to refer this to our next full board meeting, which might be next week after Personnel and Human Services.
Support.
Any more discussion on that? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. But we would hope that maybe you could get together and you could get the, get the information so it comes back to the board so we have it. We could have it by the weekend, so we can absorb a little bit more. I think that would help a lot.
Yep, any information that's needed.
Mr. Barsha.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the commission for agreeing to take it up possibly in a week, and just say that before Brian leaves, I think you've had a real successful business model in the last 14 years. Could you share with the commission the extent of your involvement in affordable housing and regular housing across the state? How many projects you've been involved in? How many housing units? Just because you do have an extensive track record and are very familiar with the requirements and obviously have very successful projects to point to.
Yeah, we own and manage about 8,000 projects, or not 8,000, I'm sorry, 8,000 units. As I had mentioned, we started back in 1990. We've been doing deals every year ever since, and some of these have just been re-syndications of our own deals. We also partnered on a deal in Wisconsin, and again, that was somebody that came to us and asked if we would partner with them on that. We have We also took over a nonprofit out in the Seattle area. So we have projects also out that way, which we've got a gentleman out there that runs our Seattle office, and those are also low-income housing properties. But predominantly, we are in Michigan. We've got assets everywhere from Traverse City to Grand Rapids to Detroit, Milford, Brighton, right here, obviously, Bay City, and just Lansing, Belding, just kind of scattered all over the state. We've got a large number of concentration in the city of Detroit, which is where we had first started with our projects back in 1991.
Do we want to come back next week? Is that what you're thinking? Yes? Yes? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, one last comment.
Quick question, if I could. How does the investor get reimbursed for the money to rehabilitate this other than the tax credits? Now, tax credits are pretty important to them, but do they receive, is there a loan that goes out that they, let's say they buy $10 million in tax credits?
Yeah, no, so we have obviously our partnership agreement with them, that says they're going to pay us this amount for the tax credits, but that's all that they get. They have, number one, they have the guarantee from MHT that they're going to get these tax credits, because at closing, they won't give us this full, they won't give that right at closing. What they do is they put in 20% of that at closing. And then at 50%, it's different on every deal, but at 50%, they might say, we'll give you another $1.5 million at 50%. And then at construction completion, they might say, we'll give you another $1.5 million. And then when the project's complete, something else I didn't mention, which is a good point, there's what's called a contractor's cost certification that the contract is required to have done. It's on a MSHDA form. They're required to have a CPA firm do it. And it basically details out every single contractor that was used on the job and every single category and every single cost. And then we get that from the general contractor, and we have to do an owner's cost certification, which incorporates that. So every dollar that's put into the project is certified by a CPA firm, and that's the document that goes to MSHDA for them to issue that low-income housing tax credit final form. And that's what they get. That's kind of, when they get that, they say, okay, now we have the low-income housing tax credits, and then they get the tax return every year. So to answer your question, when they pay that money in, they're paying it in knowing in the end they're going to get this form from MSHDA that's going to be filed with their taxes. So that's their only payback, is the tax return that they get every year that shows how much low-income housing tax credits they get.
And it also satisfies to some extent the CRA requirement.
Yeah, if it's a bank, and the majority of, probably 80% of our investors have been banks.
And most of the time they'll purchase it under normal circumstances. You'll have $1 in tax credit. They'll purchase 96 cents for every dollar that they're purchasing. So they're getting 4 cents back on every dollar.
Correct, yeah.
All righty then.
Just one comment, Mr. Chairman. Brian, could you and the staff work closely with Mr. Redmond and each of the commissioners to try to satisfy any questions that they have before the next meeting? Would you make that a top priority?
Yeah, we will be 100%
written
available.
questions as well as verbal.
I brought some cards, and Peter may have too, and I can pass out my cards, and it's got my email and phone number and everything on there, so we can be available to get any information that's needed. Or even if references are needed, we could get references for if anybody wanted to talk with anyone at the Bay City Housing Commission, other projects, partnerships.
Thank you.
So motion to refer it
I think we got that. Are we done? Rick, do anything else?
New
We're all
business.
set? Okay, we're all set.
There was
Yeah,
54 from the Drain Commissioner.
Oh, yeah, we got to go through the other couple we got to do. Okay. Unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? Any new business?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Before you, you have Resolution 2017-284 from the Drain Office to correct an error. I so move this resolution.
Support.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any more new business? Any miscellaneous? Announcements. We made all our appointments to the Department on Aging Advisory Committee, so that's out. Do we need a closed session today, ma'am?
We do need closed session, Mr. Chair, on two matters. I request to go into closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268 subsection E to consult with the attorney regarding trial or settlement strategy in connection with the Hammond minor litigation.
Okay. We need to take a vote. Roll call, please. We need a motion to go into closed session. Support. Move and support. All in favor? Oh, roll call, please.
We start with Commissioner Ryder, please.
Yes.
Lutz?
Yes.
Durancheck?
Yes.
Krieger?
Yes.
Big Ick?
Yes.
Coonan?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, we're back in regular session, and I need a motion to follow the recommendation of our attorney. Do we need the name of the case, what we're talking about? A number?
The Hammond minor litigation.
The Hammond minor litigation.
So moved.
Support. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would request that the board have a motion to go into closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268H to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute related to a property sale.
So moved.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Lutz?
Yes.
Durancheck?
Yes.
Krieger?
Yep.
Big Ick?
Yes.
Coonan?
Yes.
Ryder?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Welcome to closed session. Okay, at this point, we're back in regular session. Commissioner Ryder,
I would make a motion, take no action at this time.
Support.
any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn is always in order.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned.